Good evening, I'm Faye Kwan. Trump administration mulls adding 36 countries to the US travel ban. And China says it's willing to help de-escalate the Israel-Iran conflict. All this and more coming up on AWANI International. The Trump administration is considering expanding its travel restrictions, according to an internal State Department cable. The move could see citizens from 36 additional countries barred from entering the U.S. The cable, signed by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, reportedly listed countries that may face full or partial entry suspensions if they fail to meet security and documentation requirements within 60 days. Countries at risk include Nigeria, Egypt and Ethiopia, all strategic U.S. partners. Among Washington's concerns of them are poor identification systems, lack of deportation cooperation, and links to terrorism or anti-American activity. Earlier this month, President Trump had signed a proclamation to ban the entry of citizens from 12 countries. He said it was necessary to protect the U.S. against foreign terrorists and other national security threats. In other news, China says it is willing to play a constructive role in de-escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. According to Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun, Beijing has urged both countries to resolve their differences through dialogue. Now, he also warned that countries in the Middle East would be the first to suffer if the conflict escalates further. The warning comes amid ongoing airstrikes triggered by Israel's offensive last week. In the latest, Iranian missiles hit Tel Aviv and the port city of Haifa before dawn, killing at least 8 people and destroying homes. The attack prompted Israel's defense minister to warn Tehran residents that they would pay the price soon. Meanwhile, Iran's parliament is preparing a bill to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, adding that Tehran remains opposed to developing weapons of mass destruction. We'll be back with more after the break. Stay tuned.
Kelimomo datang lagi? Mungkin shampoo anda tidak 100%. Mari kita lihat. Gunalah Head & Shoulders. Menghilangkan kelimomo sehingga 100%. Membasmi kegagalan. Melindungi kulit kepala sehingga 48 jam. Supaya kelimomo dan kegagalan tidak datang lagi. Head & Shoulders.
Daulat Tuanku.
Welcome back. Israeli attacks could not have taken place without support from the United States, says Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei. He accuses the US of enabling Israel, rendering ongoing negotiations meaningless.
He also called on Washington, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, to condemn Israel's actions as acts of aggression. The same sentiment was echoed by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who said Tehran had received messages from Washington denying involvement but refuses to believe the claim. US President Donald Trump, meanwhile, expressed hope on Sunday that Israel and Iran can reach a deal, but added sometimes countries have to fight it out first. He declined to say whether he has urged Israel to halt its attacks.
Meanwhile, Russia says it is ready to act as a mediator in the conflict between Israel and Iran. Moscow adds that its proposal to store Iranian uranium in Russia also remains on the table.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov stressed the need to address and eliminate the root causes of the conflict. Prior to Israel's strikes on Tehran, Russia said last week that it was ready to remove highly enriched uranium from Iran and convert it into civilian reactor fuel. When asked about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's suggestion that military action could trigger regime change in Iran, Peskov said Moscow had taken note of the remarks, but reiterated that the Kremlin condemns actions that risk further escalation in the region.
Russia lacks credibility to mediate the crisis between Israel and Iran, says French President Emmanuel Macron. His statements come in response to US President Donald Trump's suggestion for his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin to mediate talks between the two countries.
Trump had told ABC News on Sunday that he was open to Putin taking on the role. However, Macron dismissed the idea, saying Russia was unfit given its involvement in the ongoing war in Ukraine and years of violations against the United Nations Charter. He also clarified that France was not part of any of Israel's attacks against Iran. Macron's comments came during a visit to Greenland, the first by a foreign minister since Trump threatened to take over the island. He is set to head to Canada next for the G7 summit.
Over in the US, President Donald Trump has ordered an expansion on deportation and detention of migrants across the country. He called on federal agencies to deliver what he describes as the single largest mass deportation program in history.
The president named Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York as specific targets, all cities that have seen large-scale protests following increased immigration rates. Los Angeles, in particular, saw Trump calling on National Guard troops and U.S. Marines to help quell the unrest, which drew strong objections from California's Democratic Governor, Gavin Newsom. In a post on Truth Social, Trump added that he had directed his entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort. The new order comes just a day after the Trump administration directed immigration officials to largely pause raids on farms, hotels, restaurants, and meatpacking plants.
South Korea has launched a task force to lead negotiations with the US on tariffs and other related issues. The task force will be headed by new Trade Minister Yohan Koo and will be in charge of crafting a package deal.
According to the Industry Ministry, the task force comprises of officials overseeing trade, manufacturing, energy and investment, among others. On April 2nd, US President Donald Trump announced a 25% reciprocal tariff on South Korea that is currently on pause until July 8th. Earlier this month, Trump and South Korea's newly elected president, Lee Jae-myung, had agreed to work towards a swift trade deal in their first phone call since Lee was elected. South Korea was seeking waivers from the Trump administration's tariffs that affect major export sectors, including automobiles, steel and semiconductors.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says boosting the number of nuclear-powered submarines operated by Australia, the US and the UK will make the Indo-Pacific more secure and align with US interests. He is set to meet US President Donald Trump at the G7 summit in Canada just a week after the Pentagon announced a review of the trilateral pact.
Albanese says he'll stress Australia's financial contribution to bolstering US industrial submarine production, expanded access for US vessels to Australian maintenance yards, and the long-standing US military presence in Darwin. He will also stand firm on AUKUS, resisting calls for an alternative plan despite the US probe, while Canberra has downplayed the review as routine. The US move has sparked renewed concerns among allies about the future of the $239 billion pact, which could become even more costly if Trump seeks changes under his America First policy.
China's economic performance in May painted a mixed picture, with manufacturing and exports taking the hit from ongoing US tariffs, while domestic consumption showed modest improvement. Retail sales rose 6.4% year-on-year, marking the strongest growth since late 2023.
The figures beat analysts' estimates for a 5% increase and up from 5.1% growth recorded in April. Industrial output growth, however, slowed slightly to 5.8%, just below forecasts of a 5.9% rise. China's property sector also continued to weigh on the broader economy. Property investment fell 10.7% in the first 5 months of 2025 compared to the same period last year, deepening from a 10.3% decline in January to April. The latest data comes as US President Donald Trump announced a trade deal that had been reached with China, restoring a fragile truce between the two major economies. To cushion the blow from US tariffs, Beijing rolled out a stimulus package last month, including interest rate cuts and a major liquidity injection. Still, analysts remain cautious, warning that China may struggle to meet its 5% growth target for the year.
Chinese President Xi Jinping arrived in Kazakhstan today for a 3-day visit. He is set to hold bilateral meetings to deepen China's partnership with Kazakhstan and attend the second China Central Asia Summit.
The summit is scheduled to take place from June 16th to 18th in the Kazakh capital Astana. Leaders from Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan are also expected to attend. The first such summit was held in central China's Xi'an back in May 2023. Last year, the cumulative trade volume between China and Central Asian countries reached approximately $94.8 billion.
Since taking office, US President Donald Trump has launched a series of actions targeting student activism, including threats to revoke student visas at Harvard and to strip Columbia University of its academic accreditation. Ui Zihao, chief executive of non-profit think tank HEA Inc., discusses whether this could set a dangerous precedent for other American universities.
The first one targeted was actually Columbia universities, which has been a highlight in terms of the, the administration actually called campus violence, on those Gaza protests and things. But again, it is a similar playbook. The administration actually give all these universities a list that you will actually need to surrender all those foreign universities data, all those disciplinary records, all the research scope done by the researcher of the universities. And the whole pictures behind this requirement is not so-called a review, but it's more like to stoke fear, into the university, so that they are forcing universities to run into the ideology tracks that the Trump administrations want the universities to adopt.
While Columbia's administration issued a public apology for its handling of protests on campus, Zihao said it was Harvard's response that marked a turning point, sparking a broader battle over university autonomy in the US.
So Harvard is on the spotlight because Harvard is the first university in US that do not bow to the Trump administrations. So Harvard has kind of lead the oppositions to these overreaching administrative actions towards the Trump administrations. So definitely this will change the whole ecosystem of the US higher educations. If you could see in some of the state universities, that has already happened very recently in University of Florida, and also universities of Indiana states. They have already clamped down on the universities, and they want the universities to comply to the state administrative. That is easy because University of Florida, University of Louisiana states, those are universities kind of publicly owned by the state governments. So you can see it is a ripple that's spread across all the whole U.S. higher education system, and I'm afraid this would not stop until there is a decision, the landmark decisions from the United States Supreme Court on what is the right and what is the border, of the government administrations that can interfere to the universities.
That report wraps up AWANI International. Stay tuned for our reports on the rivalries, strategies, and the shifts behind the power affairs driving the new global order. Visit international.astroawani.com for more, and be sure to follow our social media accounts at Power Affairs. I'm Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching, and good night.